I never planned to crash a charity gala. I was just delivering a donation check. A modest one, really, tucked inside a plain envelope that Emma had decorated with colourful stickers at the kitchen table. But when my mother-in-law, Patricia, opened that door and stared at me like I was some unwelcome visitor, her eyes sharp and calculating, her smile frozen in place, I knew immediately that I didn't belong here. I wasn't part of their circle. Not anymore. Her words came next, delivered with that practiced politeness that cuts deeper than any shout. "Oh, Marie, I wasn't expecting you." She said it like I'd interrupted something sacred, like Emma and I were trespassers at some exclusive club. I hadn't known about the gala. That's what stung the most. No invitation, no phone call, not even a casual mention during our last awkward conversation. I peered past her shoulder. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over elegantly dressed guests. A massive banner reading Children's Hospital Foundation Gala hung above the main entrance. Dozens of doctors and their families mingled with champagne glasses, their designer gowns and tailored suits making my simple black dress feel shabby. The chatter died when they noticed me. The silence felt thick and uncomfortable. I searched the crowd for Miles, my brother-in-law. He stood near the auction display, laughing with a group of surgeons until his eyes met mine. His expression shifted, that easy confidence melting into something guarded. He glanced toward Patricia, then looked away as if we'd never shared a family dinner. I squeezed Emma's hand tighter. She wore her favorite blue dress, the one with tiny pearl buttons. I bent down to whisper, "Sweetheart, let's just give them the envelope and leave, okay?" But before I could stand back up, Emma pulled away from me. She walked straight up to Patricia, looked her directly in the eyes, and said with startling composure, "I know we don't belong here. That's why I brought Dad's medical card too." The effect was instant. You could feel the shock ripple through the room. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the string quartet seemed to pause. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Several guests exchanged worried glances. Patricia's face went pale, her jaw tightening. But Emma stood there, calm and steady like she'd been preparing for this moment. Then, without breaking eye contact, she reached into her small, sequined purse and pulled out a business card, pristine white with blue lettering. "Dr. David Chen, internal medicine, my ex-husband's card. Let me explain something. David is Emma's father and my former husband. We divorced 3 years ago, and while our marriage couldn't survive, our partnership as parents did. We remain respectful, supportive. He's not just a doctor, he's the kind of man who keeps his word. He stayed present in our daughter's life. He stayed connected to mine in his own way, especially when it became obvious that Patricia's family had slowly begun freezing us out after the divorce. It started small. Medical community events that somehow I never heard about. Family gatherings that got rescheduled without anyone telling me. Then it was birthdays I learned about through social media posts. Holiday celebrations I discovered through photographs online. But I kept trying, kept sending cards, kept making phone calls, kept smiling through the pain. Until today, this moment. My heart was racing, not from anger, but from humiliation, confusion, the crushing weight of rejection. I wasn't the bitter ex-wife, the difficult sister-in-law, or the family troublemaker. I was just a nurse holding a donation envelope, watching doors close in my face while my own extended family treated me like a stranger. And my daughter, barely 10 years old, held her ground. Not with dramatics, not with tears, but with clear purpose, with dignity. "You brought Dad's card," I whispered, stunned. Emma nodded, her gaze still fixed on Patricia. "I saw the messages, Mom. I saw everything. I wanted them to know we're not defenseless." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about a charity event. This was about something much deeper. Something that had been growing for years. Something I'd tried to ignore to maintain peace. And it was Emma, my observant, brave-hearted daughter, who had seen through the polite facades and decided she wouldn't let them erase us silently. I hadn't always felt like an outsider in David's family. There was a time when we felt welcomed, genuinely included. We were the kind of extended family that gathered for holiday dinners where everyone actually enjoyed each other's company. Patricia was the organizer. Controlled, efficient, never one to show vulnerability. She had clear expectations and she had Miles, her perfect son-in-law. Me, I was the helpful one. The one who arrived early to set up, who mediated when conversations got tense, who stayed late to clean up. I was the supporter, never the center of attention, never the favorite. And that felt acceptable for a long time, until I married David and then divorced him. That's when the dynamic began to shift. David and I didn't end in destruction. We simply evolved into incompatible people. He became consumed with his medical practice, and I grew tired of trying to hold our life together alone. When we finally separated, Patricia's reaction wasn't compassion. It was judgment, barely concealed. "You should have worked harder at it," she told me. "A woman needs to keep her marriage intact." I remember standing in her pristine kitchen after I'd broken the news, my hands trembling as I held a cup of coffee, her words cutting through my already fragile composure. "He was never home, Patricia," I'd explained. "He chose his career over his family." She barely blinked. "Successful men have demanding careers. You don't abandon a good man over career pressures." That was the turning point. The gradual closing of doors. Not dramatic, just steady. Invitations became less frequent, then stopped entirely. Phone conversations grew stiff and formal. I kept trying, especially for Emma's sake. I didn't want her to lose connection to her extended family. But somehow, I became the one always reaching across an ever-widening gap. That Saturday evening, the night of the gala, I had no idea what was happening. Emma and I had just finished dinner at home. She'd made a card for the children's hospital. Something sweet with crayon drawings of smiling doctors. "We'll just drop this off quickly," I told her. "Just a brief visit." "I understand," she said, carefully folding the card into her purse. "Just dropping it off." Emma has always been perceptive. I sometimes forget how much she observes, how much she processes at 10 years old. She's a blend of David and me, but somehow more intuitive than either of us ever were. She reads situations like an open book. During the drive over, I practiced what I'd say if things felt uncomfortable. "Just wanted to contribute to the cause," I'd smile politely. "Hope it goes well." That was all. No expectations, no drama. I hadn't even bothered with fancy clothes. I wasn't trying to make an impression. I genuinely didn't know about the gala. I hadn't been informed. No invitation, no mention. I discovered later that Patricia had sent digital invitations through the medical community network. My name wasn't included. Neither was Emma's. Everyone else had known about it for weeks. Everyone else had planned their evening around it. But me, I was invisible, forgotten. It didn't register until I saw the valet parking on the street, the red carpet leading to the entrance, the sounds of live music drifting through the open doors. That sinking feeling hit me the moment I stepped out of my car. "Mom?" Emma asked, looking around at the elegant setup. "Is this a big event?" I nodded slowly. "It appears to be." She didn't say anything immediately, just held the envelope closer to her chest. I hesitated at the entrance steps. My stomach churned. I genuinely wanted to leave. Just drive away quietly. Preserve what dignity I had left. Drop off the donation another time when no one was around. But Emma looked up at me and said softly, "We're already here." So we walked up those steps and everything changed. I had no idea what Emma had tucked into her small purse. I didn't know she'd taken one of David's business cards from our kitchen drawer. I didn't know she had read the text messages I thought I'd hidden well enough. Group messages between Patricia and Miles discussing the gala and saying things like, "Don't worry about Marie. She probably won't show up anyway." But Emma knew. And somewhere in her young heart she made a decision. Not to start a conflict, but to end the pretending. The thing about exclusion is that you don't notice the first slight or the second. But eventually, you look around and realize you're standing alone in the hallway while your child watches. I thought I was just making a charitable donation, but what I was really delivering was truth. The moment Patricia opened that door, I realized we'd made a terrible mistake. She stood there in an elegant silver gown and perfectly applied makeup. She looked genuinely startled. Not just surprised, but caught off guard. Her eyes moved from the envelope in Emma's hands to my face, as if calculating how to handle this disruption. "Oh, Marie, I wasn't expecting you." 4 words that felt like a wall going up. She didn't step aside to welcome us. She didn't ask about our evening. She didn't even acknowledge her step-granddaughter. I felt frozen on the marble steps, suddenly aware of how out of place we looked. The word welcome engraved on the brass nameplate beside the door felt like mockery. I stared at her, blinking, wondering if I'd misunderstood something. I held up the envelope. Emma wanted to make a donation. Beyond her, I could see the entire elaborate setup. Catered appetizers on silver platters covered every surface. White orchids and golden ribbons decorated the space. Medical professionals, their spouses, community leaders, people I recognized from David's old hospital gatherings, all dressed in evening wear, holding wine glasses and engaging in animated conversations until they noticed me. The energy in the room shifted, conversations becoming quieter. A few people offered polite smiles before turning back to their discussions. Others simply stared. Miles appeared near the pianist, a whiskey in his hand. His expression hardened when he saw us. He didn't wave. He didn't approach. Patricia remained blocking the doorway. "I didn't realize you were hosting an event," I said quietly. Patricia's shoulders lifted in a slight shrug. "It was arranged rather quickly." Another lie. There was no way this level of organization happened spontaneously. I'd seen the planning committee emails forwarded to David weeks earlier. Professional catering, printed programs, a live auction with donated artwork. I nodded slowly. "Well, we'll just leave this and go." I started to extend the envelope toward her. She made no move to take it. Then Emma stepped forward. Her voice was clear, steady, and far more mature than any 10-year-old should sound. "I know we don't belong here," she said. "That's why I brought Dad's medical card, too." She removed the business card from her purse and held it up for everyone to see. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard fabric rustling. The party atmosphere evaporated. The pianist's fingers stilled on the keys. Smiles vanished, glasses lowered. My cousin by marriage dropped her appetizer napkin and didn't notice it fall. Patricia's mouth opened slightly, but no sound emerged. I whispered urgently, "Emma, what are you doing?" She looked up at me. Her lower lip trembled slightly, but her voice remained firm. "I saw the text, Mom. I saw what they wrote about us. I thought maybe if they knew Dad was paying attention, they'd stop pretending we don't matter." I felt heat rushing to my face. Embarrassment, anger, heartbreak, every emotion swirling like a storm inside my chest. I looked around, hoping anyone would intervene. Patricia's sister-in-law stood near the dessert table, refusing to meet my eyes. Miles finally walked over, moving slowly like he was approaching something unpleasant. "Marie," he said with a curt nod. His gaze flicked to Emma, then away again. "You really weren't informed about the guest list?" "What guest list?" I asked. This was meant for medical community families only. My heart dropped. The kind of drop that steals your breath. I looked at Patricia. Her expression told me everything her words didn't. "You're not medical community family anymore." I tried to swallow, but my throat felt raw. "Emma is David's daughter," I said. "That makes her medical community family." "David's not here," Patricia replied coolly. The way she said his name like it left a bad taste made me wince, as if Emma's connection to this world had been severed along with our marriage. I turned to my daughter. Her face showed no confusion now, no sadness, just exhaustion. I gently took the envelope from her hands and placed it on the entrance table. "Let's go," I said. Emma didn't protest. She slipped her hand into mine. And for the first time, I felt no shame in walking away. But something inside me shattered. Not just because of their actions, but because I finally understood what this really was. I had spent years making excuses, minimizing incidents, explaining away their coldness. But this wasn't coldness. This was deliberate exclusion. And my daughter had recognized it before I did. That night after the gala we'd been excluded from, I sat on Emma's bed brushing her long hair while she stared at the ceiling without speaking. We had left Patricia's house without saying goodbye to anyone. No dramatic confrontations, no raised voices, just the quiet sound of our footsteps on the marble walkway and the soft click of my car door closing. But inside I was trembling with rage, not the explosive kind of anger, but the deep, aching kind that settles in your bones. A recognition I could no longer deny. Emma's words kept replaying in my mind. I thought maybe if they knew Dad was paying attention, they'd stop pretending we don't matter. It was devastating. Not because she was wrong, but because she was absolutely right. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" I asked gently, running my fingers through her hair. She turned her head toward me. "No, I'm just tired of pretending they care about us." That broke something inside me. I waited until she fell asleep, then stood in our small hallway for a long time, looking at the framed photographs on the wall. My nursing school graduation, me holding newborn Emma, a family photo from before the divorce. I had worked so hard to maintain connections, to keep relationships intact even when they were clearly deteriorating. But now I was finished pretending. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at our kitchen table. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Everything okay?" Emma mentioned something happened at Patricia's. "Should I come over?" I hesitated, then typed back. "Can you call me? I need to discuss something important." Within minutes, we were talking. "I want to ask you about the foundation account," I said. There was a pause on his end. "The one your father established for Emma's education?" "Yes," I said. I think Patricia's family is trying to modify it. I think they may have already started the process. David sighed heavily. I've had suspicions about that. What should I do? My voice wavered. I've been avoiding confrontation for years just to prevent exactly this situation. Legal battles, family drama, courtroom procedures. But now my 10-year-old daughter is the one standing up for us. He was quiet for several moments. Marie, listen carefully. You're not doing this to attack them. You're doing this to protect Emma. And honestly, you've been too accommodating for too long. I closed my eyes. He was absolutely right. I'd maintained peace so effectively that I'd stopped shielding my daughter from the people who were hurting her most. Family members, the ones who should have supported her, were the ones treating her like she didn't count. David offered to review the foundation documents to verify that nothing had been altered without proper authorization. I agreed immediately. The next morning, I sat Emma down and explained everything. I spoke with your father, I said. And I'm going to consult with someone about the education fund. Grandpa Chen established it for you because he believed in your future. No one should be able to change that. She studied my face for a long time, then nodded slowly. You're not upset that I brought his card? I smiled for the first time in days. Honestly, you showed more courage than I've shown in years. Emma leaned against my shoulder. I just didn't want us to be invisible anymore. That was my moment of clarity. This wasn't just about money or social events or subtle snubs from Patricia's family. This was about recognition, about my daughter growing up with a sense of her own worth, about refusing to shrink ourselves to fit into a family structure that had no room for us, about not teaching her that silence equals strength when really it just equals being forgotten. So I began speaking up. I didn't post complaints on social media. I didn't send angry messages to the family group chat, but I did send careful professional emails to Miles and his wife requesting clarification about the event and the foundation. I copied David on everything. I also wrote to Patricia. It wasn't accusatory. It was direct. If you no longer consider Emma and me part of this family, I would prefer to hear that directly, rather than discovering it through event planning and whispered conversations. And if Emma isn't family to you, you don't need to pretend otherwise. But she will always know her value, with or without your recognition. I received no responses, and perhaps that silence was the answer I needed. But I had already made my choice. We weren't going to be invisible anymore. 3 days passed in complete silence. No replies to my emails, no returned calls, nothing from Patricia or Miles or anyone in their circle, not even a passive-aggressive comment in the family messaging group that I'd apparently been removed from months ago. Then on Thursday afternoon, Patricia called me directly. Not a text, not an email, but an actual phone call. The name Patricia appeared on my screen and my stomach clenched. I stared at it for several seconds before answering. Hello? Her voice was clipped, businesslike. So now you're involving medical professionals in family matters. I blinked in surprise. No pleasantries. No, how are you doing? Straight to confrontation. I'm protecting my daughter, I said calmly. Something you should have considered last weekend. There was a lengthy pause on her end. The kind that tells you someone is swallowing words they don't want to say aloud. You made everyone uncomfortable, she finally stated. I almost laughed at the irony. No, Patricia, you did that. You made me uncomfortable when you blocked your granddaughter from entering your home. And you made Emma uncomfortable when you made it clear she wasn't welcome. She wasn't on the guest list. She's 10 years old. Patricia didn't respond to that. I took a steadying breath. We're finished with pretending. I know about the foundation. I know about the attempts to modify it. And I know what you've been saying about us privately. Her tone became sharper. You're misinterpreting things. It's more complicated than you understand. It's exactly as simple as I understand it. She tried to backtrack, mentioning something about how things had become complex with the foundation after David's father passed away. That Miles was trying to manage everything properly. That I'd been distant since the divorce, as if my absence had been my choice, as if I hadn't been gradually pushed away. But I didn't engage in argument. I simply said, we'll let the professional consultation handle it. She went silent again. Then came the final revelation. The statement that told me everything I needed to know. Well, she said with tight control, if this is the path you're choosing, don't expect to be included in future family matters. There it was. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, but a deliberate choice. Her voice was cold but composed, like she was discussing rearranging furniture rather than cutting off her granddaughter and daughter-in-law. She was drawing a clear boundary. And for the first time, I wasn't intimidated by it. "Thank you for the honesty," I said and ended the call. The following day, David forwarded me an email from the Foundation's legal advisor. Apparently, Miles had submitted documentation to redirect Dr. Chen's educational fund entirely toward his own son's future, without including Emma's name, without notifying me as Emma's guardian. But the paperwork contained a critical flaw because Dr. Chen had written Emma's full name in permanent ink, not David's children or descendants. He had written Emma Marie Chen, my beloved granddaughter. Clear and legally specific. They couldn't erase her without my signed consent, which they didn't have. That was when everything crystallized. This wasn't about a charity gala. This was about power, control, and ownership of legacy, about who gets remembered and who gets erased from family history. I knew Dr. Chen had adored Emma. He used to read her bedtime stories when she visited and called her my little scholar. He had left her something meaningful, something permanent. And his own family had attempted to pretend she didn't exist. I took Emma out for ice cream that weekend, just the two of us. The autumn air was crisp and the maple trees were displaying those brilliant orange leaves she loved so much. As she carefully ate her strawberry cone, she asked, "Will we still visit Patricia's family?" I looked at her thoughtfully. "Do you want to?" She shrugged with 10-year-old wisdom. "I don't think they want to see us anymore." I reached across our small table and squeezed her free hand. "Then that's their loss," I said. "And it won't affect us." Later that evening, a colleague from David's former hospital texted me. She had attended the gala. She said people had been talking afterwards, that there had been whispered conversations, that the Foundation situation wasn't news to anyone. She apologized for not speaking up during the event. She said she felt ashamed of her silence. That message affected me deeply because until then, I wondered if I'd been imagining things. Maybe I was being oversensitive or dramatic or bitter about the divorce. But no, I hadn't imagined anything. I was simply finally seeing the situation clearly. They had tried to erase us from family history, but Emma, 10 years old, carrying a sequined purse, had walked directly into an event where she wasn't wanted and announced to everyone present, "I see what you're doing, and I'm not afraid of you." And in that moment, all their polite facades crumbled. After everything settled the gala, the silence, the Foundation revelation, I expected to feel bitter for months. But I didn't. I felt liberated. Not the dramatic kind of freedom where you pack everything and drive towards some imagined better life. It was the quiet kind. The kind where you wake up and realize you're no longer waiting for a phone call, for an apology, for acceptance at a table you've been circling hopefully for years. I was done waiting. The strange thing was that once I stopped asking to be seen, I finally saw myself more clearly than I had in years. I thought I would grieve the loss of extended family. But truthfully, what I grieved was the illusion of family. The version I kept constructing in my mind to justify how they treated me. The version where Patricia would eventually respect me again. Where Miles would reach out just to check on us. Where Emma would have cousins, holiday traditions, extended family hugs. But real family shows up consistently. Real family doesn't disappear when circumstances get complicated. And when I looked at who had actually shown up for us, it wasn't Patricia. It wasn't Miles. It was David. It was Emma. It was me. About a week after the confrontation, Emma came home from school and handed me a drawing she'd made. It was done in crayon purple and yellow, showing two stick figures holding hands in front of a small apartment building. She had labeled them Mom and Me. Above the figures, in block letters, she had written, "My family is complete." That drawing is still on our refrigerator. I cried when she gave it to me. Not from sadness, but because she had captured something it had taken me decades to understand. Being chosen is more powerful than being born into something. I had spent so much time trying to force my way back into a family structure that had never actually made space for me. But Emma never asked for space. She created it with courage, with honesty, with a sequined purse and a truth that shook the foundation of everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. While some people called her behavior dramatic or inappropriate, I call it something else entirely. I call it survival. David helped finalize everything with the Foundation. Legally, Emma's educational fund is protected now. They can protest and complain, but they cannot erase her from Dr. Chen's legacy. It turns out he understood the family he had raised, and he also understood which relationships would honor his memory long after he was gone. One evening, David came over for dinner with us. We didn't discuss the Foundation. We simply enjoyed each other's company. I told him about a short story Emma had written for school. I showed him a new recipe I'd discovered. We felt like a team. Unconventional perhaps, but solid. After dinner, when Emma was doing homework in her room, I walked him to his car. "You handled this well," he said quietly. "With Emma, with all of this legal complexity?" "I don't feel like I handled it well," I admitted. "She had to defend our family. She shouldn't need to do that at 10 years old." David smiled gently. "Maybe not. But she did it because she knows you would defend her 1,000 times over without hesitation. That's the kind of love that creates security." He was absolutely right. There is power in being someone your child can trust completely. In being the safe place to land and the shield when the world becomes hostile. I didn't handle everything perfectly, but I showed up consistently. I kept showing up. That's what mattered most. Some extended family members reached out later. My former sister-in-law called and apologized for remaining silent during the gala. A couple of distant relatives sent messages saying they hadn't understood what was really happening. But from Patricia, nothing. From Miles, continued silence. And I found peace with that because closure isn't always about conversation. Sometimes it's simply a decision, a final choice. So I made mine. No more pursuing invitations. No more minimizing myself to accommodate someone else's comfort. No more raising Emma to believe love should feel like something you have to earn through perfect behavior. These days, our apartment is quieter, but it feels warmer. We bake cookies on Saturday mornings. We work on jigsaw puzzles during rainy afternoons. And occasionally, Emma still asks if Patricia might ever call us. "I don't know," I tell her honestly. "But I do know this: you are enough exactly as you are. And we are more than enough together." She smiles every time I say that. And I smile too. Because sometimes the family you build intentionally, imperfect and fierce and free, is stronger than the one you're born into. And when the world tries to make you smaller, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply keep standing tall.